The comments that come.
Oh, look at it. Do you need any tablet for definition?
I don't think so. There's like one day I went without.
Okay, good. Just know what it. Just follow it.
Hello, hello. 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 We are reading Lightning Thief, Percy Jackson Lightning Thief. I think this is like at the start of chapter 2. I think that's where I last left off, yeah. Start of chapter 2. Okay. Hello, Ozil. Hello. Grover. Yep, Grover, I said. What exactly are you protecting me from? There was a huge grinding noise under our feet. Black smoke poured from the dashboard, and the whole bus filled with a smell like rotten eggs. The driver cursed and limped the greyhound over to the side of the highway. After a few minutes, clanking around in the engine compartment, the driver announced that we'd all have to get off. Grover and I filed outside with everybody else. We were on a stretch of country road. No place you noticed if you didn't break down there. On our side of the highway was nothing but maple trees and litter from old passing cars. On the other side, across 4 lanes of asphalt shimmering with afternoon heat, was an old-fashioned fruit stand. The stuff on sale looked really good, heaping boxes of bloodied cherries and apples, walnuts and apricots, jugs of cider in a clawfoot tub full of ice. There were no customers, just 3 old ladies sitting in rocking chairs in the shade of a maple tree, knitting the biggest pair of socks I've ever seen. I mean, these socks were the size of sweaters, but they were clearly socks. The lady on the right knitted one of them. The lady on the left knitted the other. The lady in the middle held an enormous basket of electric blue yarn. All 3 women looked ancient, with pale faces wrinkled like fruit leather, silver hair tied back in white bandanas, bony arms sticking out of bleached cotton dresses. The weirdest thing was, they seemed to be looking right at me. I looked over at Grover to say something about this and saw that the blood had drained from his face. His nose was twitching. Grover, I said, "Hey, man, tell me they're not looking at you. They are, aren't they?" "Yeah. Weird, huh? You think those socks would fit me?" "Not funny, Percy. Not funny at all." The old lady in the middle took out a huge pair of scissors, gold and silver, long-bladed, like shears. I heard Grover catch his breath. "We're getting on the bus," he told me. "Come on." "What?" I said. "It's 1,000 degrees in there." "Come on." He pried open the door and climbed inside, but I stayed back. Across the road, the old ladies were still watching me. The middle one cut the young, and I swear I could hear that snip across 4 lanes of traffic. Her 2 friends brought up the electric blue socks, leaving me wondering who they could possibly be for. Sasquatch or Godzilla? At the rear of the bus, the driver wrenched a big chunk of smoking metal out of the engine compartment. The bus shuddered, and the engine rocked back to life. Okay. The passengers jeered. "Darn right," yelled the driver. He slapped the bus with his hat. "Everybody back on board." Once we got going, I started feeling feverish, as if I caught the flu. Grover didn't look much better. He was shivering and his teeth were chattering. "Grover, yeah? What are you not telling me?" He dabbed his forehead with his shirt sleeve. "Percy, what do you see back at the food stand?" "You mean the old ladies? What is it about them, man? They're not like Mrs. Dodds, are they?" His expression was hard to read, but I got the feeling that the food stand ladies were something much, much worse than Mrs. Dodds, he said. "Just tell me what you saw." The middle one took out her scissors and she cut the yarn. He closed his eyes and made a gesture with his fingers that might have been crossing himself, but it wasn't. It was something else, something almost older. He said, "You saw her snip the cord." "Yeah, so, but even if I said it, I knew it was a big deal." "This is not happening," Grover mumbled. He started chewing at his thumb. "I didn't want this to be like last time." "What last time?" "Always 6th grade. They never get past 6th. "Grover," I said, because he was really starting to scare me. "What are you talking about?" "Let me walk you home from the bus station. Promise me." This seemed like a strange request to me, but I promised he could. "Is this like a superstition or something?" I asked. No answer. "Grover, that snipping of the yarn, does that mean somebody is going to die?" He looked at me mournfully, like he was already picking the kind of flower I'd like best on my coffin. Oh, Chapter 3. Grover unexpectedly loses his pants. Confession time. I ditched Grover as soon as we got to the bus terminal. I know. It was rude. Not Grover was freaking me out, looking at me like I was a dead man, muttering, "Why does this always happen? And why does it always have to be 6th grade?" Whenever he got upset, Grover's bladder acted up, so I wasn't surprised when, as soon as we got off the bus, he made me promise to wait for him, then made a beeline for the restroom. Instead of waiting, I got in my suitcase, slipped outside, and caught the first taxi uptown. "East 104th and 1st, I told the driver. "What about my mother before you meet her?" "Her name is Sally Jackson, and she's the best person in the world. It just proves my theory that the best people have the rottenest luck. Her own parents died in a plane crash when she was 5, and she was raised by an uncle who didn't care much about her. She wanted to be a novelist, so she spent high school working to save enough money for a college with a good creative writing program. Then her uncle got cancer, and she had to quit school her senior year to take care of him. After he died, she was left with no money, no family, and no diploma. The only good break she ever got was meeting my dad. I don't have any memories of him, just this sort of warm glow, maybe the barest trace of his smile. My mom doesn't like to talk about him because it makes her sad. Important, and their relationship was a secret. Then, one day, he set sail across the Atlantic on some important journey, and he never came back. Lost at sea, my mom told me. Not dead, lost at sea. She worked odd jobs, took night classes to get her high school diploma, and raised me on her own. She never complained or got mad, not even once. But I knew I wasn't an easy kid. Finally, she married Gabe Agliano, who was nice the first 30 seconds we knew him, then showed his true colors as a world-class jerk. When I was young, I nicknamed him Smelly Gabe. I'm sorry, but it's the truth. The guy reeked like moldy garlic pizza wrapped in gym shorts. Between the two of us, we made my mom's life pretty hard. The way Smelly Gabe treated her, the way he and I got along, well, when I came home is a good example. When I walked into our little apartment, hoping my mom would be home from work. Instead, smelly Gabe was in the living room, playing poker with his buddies. The television blared ESPN. Chips and beer cans were strewn all over the carpet. Hardly looking up, he set on his cigar. So, you're home. Where's my mom? Working, he said. You got any cash? That was it. No welcome back. Good to see you. How has your life been the last 6 months? Gabe had put on weight. He looked like a tuskless walrus in thrift store clothes. He had about 3 hairs on his head, all combed over his bald scalp, as if that would make him handsome or something. He managed the electronic megamart in Queens. He stayed home most of the time. I didn't know why he hadn't been fired long before. He just kept on collecting paychecks, spending the money on cigars that made me nauseous, and on beer, of course. Always beer. Whenever I was home, he expected me to provide his gambling funds. He called that our guy's secret, meaning if I told Mom, he would punch my lights out. I don't have any cash, I told him. He raised a greasy eyebrow. Gabe could sniff out money like a bloodhound, which was surprising, since his own cell should have covered up everything else. He took a taxi from the bus station, he said. Promptly paid it with a 20. Got $6-7 in change. Somebody expects to live under this roof, he ought to carry his own weight. Am I right, Eddie? Eddie, the super of the apartment building, looked at me with a twinge of sympathy. Come on, Gabe, the kid just got here. Eddie scowled into his bowl of pretzels. The other two guys passed gas in harmony. Fine, I said. I dug a wad of dollars out of my pocket and threw money on the table. I hope you lose. Your report card came, brain boy, he shouted after me. I wouldn't act so snooty. I slammed the door to my room, which really wasn't my room. During school months, it was Gabe's study. He didn't study anything in there except old car magazines, which he loved shoving my stuff in the closet, leaving his muddy boots by the windowsill, and doing his best to make this place smell like his nasty cologne and cigars and stale beer. I dropped my suitcase on my bed. Home sweet home. Gabe's smell was almost worse than the nightmares about Mr. Dodds, or the sound of that old fruit lady chair snipping the yarn. But as soon as I thought that, my legs felt weak. I remember Grover's look of panic, how he made me promise I wouldn't go home without him. A sudden chill rode through me. I felt like something, was looking for me right now, maybe pounding its way up the stairs, growing long, horrible talons. Then I heard my mom's voice. Percy? She opened the bedroom door and my fears melted. My mother can make me feel good just by walking into the room. Her eyes sparkle and change color in the light. Her smile is as warm as a quilt. She's got a few grey streaks mixed in with her long brown hair, but I never think of her as old. When she looks at me, it's like she's seeing all the good things about me, none of the bad. I've never heard her raise her voice or say an unkind word to anyone, not even me or Gabe. Oh, Percy, she hugged me tight. I can't believe it, you've gone since Christmas. Her red, white and blue Sweet on America uniform smelled like the best things in the world. Chocolate, licorice, and all the other stuff she sold at the candy shop in Grand Central. She brought me a huge bag of free samples, the way she always did when I came home. We sat together on the edge of the bed. While I attacked the blueberry sour strings, she ran her hand through my hair and demanded to know everything I hadn't put in my letters. She didn't mention anything about my getting expelled. She didn't seem to care about that, but was I okay? Was the little boy doing all right? I told her she was mothering me and to lay off and all that, but secretly I was really, really glad to see her. From the other room, Gabby yelled, Hey, Sally, how about some bean dip, huh? I gritted my teeth. My mom is the nicest lady in the world. She should have been married to a millionaire, not to some joke like Gabe. For her sake, tried to sound upbeat about my last day at the Yancy Academy. I told her I wasn't too down about the expulsion. It lasted almost a whole year this time. I'd made some new friends. I'd done pretty well in Latin, and honestly, the fights hadn't been as bad as the headmaster said. I liked the NC Academy. I really did. I put such a good spin on the year, I almost convinced myself. I started choking up, thinking about Grover and Mr. Bruno. Even Nancy Bobo Fit suddenly didn't seem so bad. Until that trip to the museum. What? My mom asked. Her eyes tugged at my conscience, trying to pull out the secrets. Did something scare you? No, Mom. I felt bad lying. I wanted to tell her about Mrs. Dodds and the 3 old ladies at the yarn, but I thought it would sound stupid. She pursed her lips. She knew I was holding back, but she didn't push me. I have a surprise for you, she said. We're going to the beach. My eyes widened. Montauk? 3 nights, same cabin. When? As soon as I get changed. I couldn't believe it. My mom and I hadn't been to Montauk the last 2 summers because Gabby said there wasn't enough money. Gabby appeared in the doorway and growled. Bean dip, Sally, didn't you hear me? I wanted to punch him, but I met my mom's eyes and I understood she was offering me a deal. Be nice to Gabby for a little while, just until she was ready to leave for Montauk. Then we would get out of here. I was on my way, honey, she told Gabby. We were just talking about the trip. Gabby's eyes got small. The trip. You mean you were serious about that? I knew it, I muttered. He won't let us go. Of course he will, my mom said evenly. Your stepfather is just worried about money, that's all. Besides, she added, Gabriel wouldn't have to settle for bean dip. And make him enough 7-layer dip for the whole weekend. Guacamole, sour cream, the works. Gabe softened a bit. So there's money for your trip. It comes out of your clothes budget, right? Yes, honey, my mother said. And you won't take my car anywhere but there and back. We'll be very careful. Gabe scratched his double chin. Maybe if you hurry with that 7-layer dip, and maybe if the kid apologizes for abducting my poker game. Maybe if I kick you in the soft spot, I thought, and make you sing soprano for a week. But my mom's eyes warned me to not make him mad. Why did she put up with this guy? I wanted to scream. Why did she care what he thought? I'm sorry, I muttered. I'm really sorry I interrupted your incredibly important poker game. Please go back to it right now. Gabe's eyes narrowed. His tiny brain was probably trying to detect sarcasm in my statement. Yeah, whatever, he decided. He went back to his game. Thank you, Percy, my mom said. Once you get to Montauk, we'll talk more about whatever you've forgotten to tell me, okay? For a moment, I thought I saw anxiety in her eyes, the same fear I'd seen Grover during the bus ride, as if my mom too felt an odd chill in the air. But then her layer returned, and her smile returned, and I figured I must have been mistaken. She ruffled my hair and went to make Gabe his 7-layer dip. An hour later, we were ready to leave. Gabe took a break from his poker game long enough to watch me lug my mom's bags into the car. He kept griping and groaning about losing her cooking, and more important, his 78 Camaro for the whole weekend. Not a scratch on this car, Bane boy, he warned me as I loaded the last bag. Not one little scratch. Like I'd be the one driving. I was 12. But that didn't matter to Gabe. If a seagull so much as pooped on his paint job, he'll find a way to blame me. Watching him lumber back towards the apartment building, I got so mad I did something I can't explain. As Gabe reached the doorway, I made the hand gesture I'd seen Grover make on the bus. A sort of warding off evil gesture, a clawed hand over my heart, then a shoving movement towards Gabe. The screen door slammed so hard he whacked him in the butt and sent him flying up the staircase as if he'd been shot from a cannon. Maybe it was just the wind or some freak accident with the hinges, but I didn't stay long enough to find out. I got in the Camaro and told my mom to step on it. Our rental cabin was on the south shore, way out on the tip of Long Island. It was a little pastel box with faded curtains, half sunken into the dunes. There was always sand in the sheets and spiders in the cabinets, and most of the time the sea was too cold to swim in. I loved the place. It'd been going there since I was a baby. My mom had been going even longer. She never exactly said, but I knew why the beach was special to her. It was the place where she'd met my dad. As we got closer to Montauk, she seemed to grow younger, years of worry and milk disappearing from her face. Her eyes turned the color of the sea. We got there at sunset, opened all the cabin's windows, and went through our usual cleaning routine. We walked on the beach, fed blue corn chips to the seagulls, and munched on blue jelly beans, blue saltwater taffy, and all the other free samples my mom had brought from work. I guess I should explain the blue food. See, Gabe had once told my mom there was no such thing. They had this fight, which seemed like a really small thing at the time. But ever since then, my mom went out of her way to eat blue. She baked blue birthday cakes. She mixed blueberry smoothies. She bought blue corn tortilla chips and brought home blue candy from the shop. This, along with keeping her maiden name, Jackson, rather than calling herself Mrs. Agliano, was proof that she wasn't totally suckered by Gabe. She did have a rebellious streak, like me. When it got dark, we made a fire. We roasted hot dogs and marshmallows. Mom told me stories about when she was a kid, back before her parents died in the plane crash. She told me about the book she wanted to write someday when she had enough money to quit the candy shop. Eventually, I got up the nerve to ask what was always on my mind whenever we came to Montauk. My father. My mom's eyes got all misty. I figured she would tell me the same thing she always did, but I never got tired of hearing them. He was kind, Percy, she said. Tall, handsome, and powerful, but gentle too. You have his black hair, you know, and his green eyes. Mom fished a blue jelly bean out of her candy bag. I wish she could see you, Percy. You would be so proud. I wonder how she could say that. What was so great about me? A dyslexic, hyperactive boy with a D+ report card, kicked out of school for the 6th time in 6 years. How old was I asked. I mean, when he left. She watched the flames. He was only with me for one summer, Percy. Right here at this beach, this cabin. But he knew me as a baby. No, honey, he knew I was expecting a baby, but he never saw you. He had to leave before you were born. I tried to square that with the fact that I seemed to remember something about my father. A warm glow, a smile. I had always assumed he knew me as a baby. My mom had never said it outright, but still, I felt it must be true. Now, to be told that he'd never even seen me. I felt angry at my father. Maybe it was stupid, but I resented him for going on that ocean voyage, for not having the guts to marry my mom. He'd left us, and now we were stuck with smelly Gabe. Are you gonna send me away again? I asked her. To another boarding school? She pulled a marshmallow from the fire. I don't know, honey. Her voice was heavy. I think we'll have to do something. Because you don't want me around? I regretted the words as soon as they were out. My mom's eyes welled with tears. She took my hand, squeezed it tight. Oh, Percy, no, I have to, honey. For your own good, I have to send you away. Her words reminded me of what Mr. Burner had said, that it was the best for me to leave Yancy. Because I'm not normal, I said. You say that as if it's a bad thing, Percy, but you don't realize how important you are. I thought UNC Academy would be far enough away. I thought you'd finally be safe. Safe from what? She met my eyes, and a flood of memories came back to me. All the weird, scary things that had ever happened to me, some of which I tried to forget. During 3rd grade, a man in a black trench coat had stalked me on the playground. When the teacher threatened to call the police, he went away growling. But no one believes me when I told them that under his broad-brimmed hat, the man had only one eye, right in the middle of his head. Before that, a really early memory, and the teacher accidentally put me down for a nap in a cot that a snake had slithered to. My mom screamed when she came to pick me up and found me playing with the limp, scaly rope I somehow managed to strangle to death in my meaty toddler hands. In every single school, something creepy had happened, something unsafe, and I was forced to move. I knew I should tell my mom about the old ladies at the fruit stand and Mrs. Dodds at the art museum, about my weird hallucinations that I had sliced my math teacher into dust with a sword. But I couldn't make myself tell her. I had a strange feeling the news would end our trip to Montauk, and I didn't want that. I tried to keep you as close to me as I could, my mom said. They told me that was a mistake. But there's only one other option, Percy, the place your father wanted to send you. And I can't stand to do it. My father wanted me to go to a special school. Not a school, she said softly. A summer camp. My head was spinning. Well, my dad, who hadn't even stayed around long enough to see me be born, talked to my mom about a summer camp. And if it was so important, why hadn't she ever mentioned it before? I'm sorry, Percy, she said, seeing the look in my eyes, but I can't talk about it. I couldn't send you to that place, for it might mean saying goodbye to you for good. For good, but if it's only a summer camp. She turned towards the fire, and I knew from her expression that if I asked her any more questions, she would start to cry. That night, I had a vivid dream. It was storming on the beach, and 2 beautiful animals, a white horse and a golden eagle, were trying to kill each other at the edge of the surf. The eagle swooped down and slashed the horse's muzzle with his huge talons. The horse veered up and kicked at the eagle's wings. As they fought, the ground rumbled, and a monstrous voice chuckled somewhere beneath the earth, goading the animals to fight harder. I ran towards them, knowing I had to stop them from killing each other, but I was running in slow motion. I knew it would be too late. I saw the eagle dive down, its beak aimed at the horse's wide eyes, and I screamed, "No!" I woke with a start. Outside, it was really storming. The kind of storm that cracks trees and blows down houses. There was no horse or eagle on the beach, just lightning making false daylight, and 20-foot waves pounding dunes like artillery. With the next thunderclap, my mum woke. She sat up, wide-eyed, and said, "Hurricane." I knew that was crazy. Long Island never sees hurricanes this early in the summer, but the ocean seemed to have forgotten. Over the roar of the wind, I heard a distant bellow, an angry, tortured sound that made my hair stand on end. Then a much closer noise, like mallets in the sand. A desperate voice, someone yelling, pounding on our cabin door. My mother sprang out of bed in her nightgown and threw open the lock. Grover stood framed in the doorway against the backdrop of pouring rain. But he wasn't exactly Grover. Searching all night, he gasped. "What were you thinking?" My mom looked at me in terror, not scared of Grover, but of why he'd come. "Percy," she said, shouting to be heard over the rain. "What happened at school? Why didn't you tell me?" I stood frozen, looking at Grover. I couldn't understand what I was seeing. "Oh, Ziu Kai Aloi Dioi," he yelled. "It's right behind me. Didn't you tell her?" I was too shocked to register that he just cursed in ancient Greek, and I understood him perfectly. I was too shocked to wonder how Grover had gotten here by himself in the middle of the night. Because Grover didn't have his pants on, and where his legs should be. My mom looked at me sternly and talked in a tone she never used before. Proceed, tell me now. I stammered something about the old ladies at the fruit stand and Mrs. Dodds, and my mom stared at me, her face deathly pale in the flashes of lightning. She grabbed her purse, tossed me in my rain jacket, and said, "Get to the car, both of you, go." Grover ran for the Camaro, but he wasn't running exactly. He was trotting, shaking his shaggy hindquarters, and suddenly his story about a muscular disorder in his legs made sense to me. I understood how he could run so fast and still limp when he walked, because where his feet should be, there were no feet, there were cloven hooves. Chapter 4. My mother teaches me bullfighting. We tore through the night along dark country roads. Wind slammed against the Camaro. Rain lashed at the windshield. I didn't know how my mom could see anything, but she kept her foot on the gas. Every time there was a flash of lightning, I looked at Grover sitting next to me in the back seat, and I wondered if I'd gone insane, or if he was wearing some kind of shag carpet pants. But no, the smell was one I remembered from kindergarten field trips to the petting zoo. Lanolin, like from wool. The smell of a wet barnyard animal. All I could think to say was, "So, you and my mom know each other?" Grover's eyes flitted to the rearview mirror, though there were no cars behind us. "Not exactly," he said. "I mean, we've never met up in person, but she knew I was watching you." Watching me? Keeping tabs on you, making sure you were okay. But I wasn't faking being your friend, he added hastily. "I am your friend." What are you exactly? That doesn't matter right now. It doesn't matter, but from the waist down, my best friend is a donkey. Grover let out a sharp, dirty, blah ha ha. I've heard him make that sound before, but I always assumed it was a nervous laugh. Now, I realized it was more of an irritated bleat. "Goat," he cried. "I'm a goat from the waist down. You just said it didn't matter." Blah ha ha. There are can't pronounce that. How do I pronounce that? Satos, okay. There are satyrs who would trample you underhoof for such an insult. Whoa, wait, satyrs. You mean like Mr. Burner's myths? Were those old ladies at the fruit stand a myth, Percy? Was Mrs. Dodds a myth? So you admit there was a Mrs. Dodds? Of course. Then why? The less you knew, the fewer monsters you'd attract. Grover said, like that should be perfectly obvious. He put mist over the human's eyes. We hoped you'd think the kindly one was a hallucination. But it was no good. You started to realize who you are. Wait a minute. What do you mean? The weird bellowing noise rose up again somewhere behind us, closer than before. Whatever was chasing us was still on our trail. "Percy," my mom said, "there's too much to explain and not enough time. We have to get you to safety." "Safety from what? Who's after me?" "Oh, nobody much," Grover said, obviously still miffed about the donkey comment. "Just the Lord of the Dead and a few of his bloodthirstiest minions." "Grover." "Sorry, Mrs. Jackson, could you drive faster, please?" I tried to wrap my head around what was happening, but I couldn't do it. I knew this wasn't a dream. I had no imagination. I could never dream up something this weird. My mom made a hard left. We swerved onto a narrower road, racing past darkened farmhouses and wooden hills and pick your own strawberry signs on white picket fences. "Where are we going?" I asked. "The summer camp I told you about." My mother's voice was tight. She was trying for my sake not to be scared. The place your father wanted me to send you. The place you didn't want me to go. Please, dear, my mom begged. This is hard enough. Try to understand. You're in danger. Because some old ladies caught yarn. Those weren't old ladies, Grover said. Those were fates. Do you know what it means? The fact they appeared in front of you? They only do that when someone's about to die. Whoa, you said you. No, I didn't. I said someone. You meant you, as in me. I meant you like someone, not you. Boys, my mom said. She pulled the wheel hard to the right, and I got a glimpse of the figure we she'd swerved to avoid. A dark, fluttering shape now lost behind us in the storm. What was that? I asked. We're almost there, my mother said, ignoring the question. Another mile. Please, please, please. I didn't know where that was, but I found myself leaning forward in the car, anticipating, wanting us to arrive. Outside, nothing but rain and darkness, the kind of empty countryside you get way out on the tip of Long Island. I thought about Mrs. Dodds in the moment she changed into the thing with pointed teeth and leathery wings. My limbs were numb from the dead shock. She really hadn't been human. She'd meant to kill me. But then I thought about Mr. Verner and the sword he had thrown me. Before I could ask Grover about that, the hair rose on the back of my neck. There was a blinding flash, a jaw-rattling boom, and our car exploded. I remember feeling weightless, like I was being crushed, fried, and hosed down all at the same time. I peeled my forehead off the back of the driver's seat and said, "Ow!" "Percy," my mom shouted. "I'm okay." I tried to shake off the daze. I wasn't dead. The car hadn't really exploded. We'd swerved into a ditch. Our driver's side doors were wedged in the mud. The roof had cracked open like an eggshell and rain was pouring in. Lightning. That was the only explanation. It had been blasted right off the road. Next to me, in the back seat, was a... Sorry. I had to sneeze. Next to me in the back seat was a big motionless lump. Grover. He was slumped over, blood trickling from the side of his mouth. I shook his furry head, thinking, "No, even if you are half barnyard animal, you're my best friend and I don't want you to die." Then he groaned, "Food," and I knew there was hope. "Percy," my mother said, "we have to." Her voice faltered. I looked back. In a flash of lightning, through the mud-spattered rear windshield, I saw a figure lumbering towards us on the shoulder of the road. The sight of it made my skin crawl. It was a dark silhouette of a huge guy, like a football player. He seemed to be holding a blanket over his head. His top half was bulky and fuzzy. His upraised hands made it look like he had horns. I swallowed hard. "Percy," my mother said, "get off the car." My mother threw herself against the driver's side door. It was jammed shut in the mud. I tried mine. Stuck too. I looked up desperately at the hole in the roof. It might have been an exit, but the edges were sizzling and smoking. "Climb out the passenger side," my mother told me. "Percy, you have to run. Do you see that big tree?" What? Another flash of lightning, and through the smoking hole in the roof, I saw the tree she meant. A huge, white house Christmas tree-sized pine at the crest of the nearest hill. "That's the property line," my mom said. "Get over that hill and you see a big farmhouse down in the valley. Run and don't look back. Yell for help. Don't stop until you reach the door." "Mom, you're coming too." Her face was pale, her eyes as sad as when she looked at the ocean. "No," I shouted. "You are coming with me. Help me carry Grover." "Food," Grover moaned a little louder. The man with the blanket on his head kept coming towards us, making his grunting, snorting noises. As he got closer, I realized he couldn't be holding a blanket over his head because his hands, huge meaty hands, were swinging at his sides. There was no blanket, meaning the bulky, fuzzy mass that was too big to be his head was his head, and the points that looked like horns. "He doesn't want us," my mother told me. "He wants you. Besides, I can't cross the property line." "But we don't have time, Percy. Go, please." I got mad then. Mad at my mother, I go over the goat, at the things with horns that was lumbering towards us and deliberately like a bull. I climbed across Grover and pushed the door open into the rain. We're going together. Come on, Mom. I told you. Mom, I'm not leaving you. Help me with Grover. I didn't wait for her answer. I scrambled outside, dragging Grover from the car. He was surprisingly light, but I couldn't have carried him very far if my mom hadn't come to my aid. Together, we draped Grover's arms over our ears and started stumbling uphill through wet waist-high grass. Glancing back, I got my first clear look at the monster. He was 7 feet tall, easy, his arms and legs like something from the cover of a Muscle Man magazine. Bulging biceps and triceps with a bunch of other seps, all stuffed like baseballs under vein-wrapped skin. He wore no clothes except underwear. I mean, bright white, foot of the looms. It would have looked funny, except the top half of his body was so scary. Coarse brown hair started at about his belly button and it got thicker as it reached his shoulders. His neck was a mass of muscle and fur leading up to his enormous head, which had a snout as long as my arm, snotty nostrils with a gleaming brass ring, cruel black eyes and horns. Enormous black and white horns with points you couldn't get from an electric sharpener. I recognized the monster, all right. He had been in one of the first stories Mr. Burner told us, but he couldn't be real. I blinked the rain out of my eyes. That's Fasiface's son, my mother said. I wish I'd known how badly they want to kill you. But he's the don't say his name, he warned. She warned. Names have power. The pine tree was still way too far, 100 yards uphill at least. I glanced behind me again. The bull man hunched over our car, looking in the windows. Or not looking exactly, more like snuffling, nuzzling. I wasn't sure why he bothered, since we were only about 50 feet away. Food? Grover moaned. Shh, I told him. Mom, what's he doing? Doesn't he see us? His sight and hearing are terrible, he said. He goes by smell, but he'll figure out where we are soon enough. As if on cue, the bull man bellowed in rage. He picked up Gabby's Camaro by the torn roof, the chassis creaking and groaning. He raised the car over his head and threw it down the road. It slammed into the wet asphalt and skidded in a shower of sparks for half a mile before coming to a stop. The gas tank exploded. On the scratch, I remembered Gabby saying, "Oops." "Percy," my mom said. "When he sees us, he'll charge. Wait until the last second, then jump out of his way, directly sideways. He can't change directions very well when he's charging. Do you understand?" How do you know all this? I've been worried about an attack for a long time. I should have expected this. I was selfish keeping me near you, but another bellow of rage, and the bull man started tromping uphill. He'd smell us. The pine tree was only a few more yards, but the hill was getting steeper and slicker, and Grover wasn't getting any lighter. The bull man closed in. Another few seconds and he'd be on top of us. My mother must have been exhausted, but she shouldered through Grover. "Go, Percy, separate. Remember what I said." I didn't want to split up, but I had the feeling she was right. It was our only chance. I sprinted to the left, turned, and saw the creature bearing down on me. His black eyes glowed with hate. He reeked like rotten meat. He lowered his head and charged. Those razor-sharp horns aimed straight at my chest. The fear in my stomach made me want to bolt, but that wouldn't work. I could never outrun this thing. So I held my ground, and at the last moment, I jumped to the side. The bull man stormed past me like a freight train, then bellowed with frustration and turned, but not towards me this time, towards my mother, who was letting Grover down in the grass. We'd reached the crest of the hill. Down the other side, I could see a valley, just as my mother had said, and the lights of the farmhouse glowing yellow through the rain. But that was half a mile away. We'd never make it. The bullman grunted, pawing the ground. He kept eyeing my mother, who was now retreating slowly downhill, back towards the road, trying to lead the monster away from Grover. Run, Percy, she told me. I can't go any farther. Run. But I just stood there, frozen in fear, as the monster charged at her. She tried to sidestep, as she told me to do, but the monster had learned his lesson. His hand shot up and grabbed her by the neck as she tried to get away. He lifted her as she struggled, kicking and pummeling the air. Mom, she caught my eyes. Managed to choke out one last word. Go. Then, with an angry roar, the monster closed its fist around my mother's neck, and she dissolved before my eyes, melting into light, a shimmering golden form, as if she were a holographic projection. A blinding flash, and she was simply gone. No! Anger replaced my fear. Newfound strength burned in my limbs, the same rush of energy I'd gotten when Mr. Dodds drew talons. The bullman bore down on Grover, who lay helpless in the grass. The monster hunched over, sniffling my best friend as if he was about to lift Grover up and make him dissolve too. I couldn't allow that. I stripped off my red rain jacket. Hey, I screamed, waving the jacket, running to one side of the monster. Hey, stupid, ground beef. Bah! The monster turned towards me, shaking his meaty fists. I had an idea, a stupid idea, but better than no idea at all. I put my back to the big pine tree and raised my red jacket in front of the bullman, thinking I'd jump out the way at the last moment. But it didn't happen like that. The bullman charged too fast, his arms out to grab me whichever way I tried to dodge. Time slowed down. My legs tensed. I couldn't jump sideways, so I leaped straight up, kicking off the creature's head, using it as a springboard, turning it in mid-air and landing on his neck. How did I do that? I didn't have time to figure it out. Only a second later, the monster's head slammed into the tree and the impact nearly knocked my teeth out. The bullman staggered around, trying to shake me. I locked my arms around his horns to keep from being thrown. Thunder and lightning were still going strong. The rain was in my eyes. The smell of rotten meat burned my nostrils. The monster shook himself around and barked like a rodeo bull. He should have just backed up into the tree and smashed me flat, but I was starting to realize that this thing only had one gear, forward. Meanwhile, Grover was started groaning in the grass. I wanted to yell at him to shut up, but the way I was getting tossed around, if I opened my mouth, I'd bite my own tongue off. Food, Grover moaned. The bullman wheeled towards him, pawed the ground again, and got ready to charge. The thought of how he had squeezed the life out of my mother made her disappear in a flash of light, and the rage filled me like high-octane fuels. I got both hands around one horn and I pulled backwards with all my might. The monster tensed, gave a surprised grunt, then snapped. The bullman screamed and flung me through the air. I landed flat on my back in the grass. My head smacked against a rock. When I sat up, my vision was blurry, but I had a horn in my hands, a ragged bone weapon the size of a knife. The monster charged. Without thinking, I rolled to one side and came up kneeling. As the monster barreled past, I drove the broken horn straight into his side, right up under his furry ribcage. The bullman roared in agony. He flailed, clawing at his chest, then began to disintegrate. Not like my mother in a flash of golden light, but like crumbling sand, blown away in chunks by the wind, the same way Mr. Dodds had burst apart. The monster was gone. The rain had stopped. The storm still rumbled, but only in the distance. I smelled like livestock and my knees were shaking. My head felt like it was splitting open. I was weak and scared and trembling with grief. I had just seen my mother vanish. I wanted to lie down and cry, but there was Grover needing my help. So I managed to haul him up and stagger down into the valley, towards the lights of the farmhouse. I was crying, calling for my mother, but I held on to Grover. I wasn't going to let him go. The last thing I remember is collapsing on a wooden porch, looking up at the ceiling fan circling above me, moths flying around a yellow light, and distant faces of a familiar-looking bearded man and a pretty girl. Her blonde hair curled like a princess's. They both looked down at me, and the girl said, "He's the one, he must be." "Silence, Annabeth," the man said. "He's still conscious. Bring him inside." Chapter 5. I play Pinocchio with a horse. I've had a weird dream full of barnyard animals. Most of them wanted to kill me. The rest wanted food. I must have woken up several times, but what I heard and saw made no sense, so I just passed out again. I must have woken up several times, but when I heard and saw... Wait, no, sorry. I remember lying in a soft bed, being spoon-fed something that tasted like buttered popcorn, only it was pudding. The girl with curly brown hair hovered over me, smirking as she scraped drips off my chin with the spoon. When she saw my eyes open, she asked, "What will happen at the summer solstice?" I managed to croak, "What?" She looked around as if afraid someone would overhear. "What's going on? What was stolen? We've only got a few weeks." "I'm sorry," I mumbled. "I don't." Somebody knocked on the door, and the girl quickly filled my mouth with pudding. The next time I awoke, the girl was gone. A husky blonde dude, like a surfer, stood in the corner of the bedroom watching over me. He had blue eyes, at least a dozen of them, on his cheeks, his forehead, and the backs of his hands. When I finally came around for good, there was nothing weird about my surroundings, except that they were nicer than I was used to. I was sitting in a deck chair on a huge porch, gazing across a meadow at green hills in the distance. The breeze smelled like strawberries. There was a blanket over my legs, a pillow behind my neck. Oh, that was great, but my mouth felt like a scorpion had been using it for a nest. My mouth was dry and nasty, and every one of my teeth hurt. On the table next to me was a tall drink. It looked like iced apple juice with a green straw and a paper parcel stuck through the maraschino cherry. My hand was so weak I almost dropped the glass once I got my fingers around it. "Careful," a familiar voice said. Grover was leaning against the porch railing, looking like he hadn't slept in a week. Under one arm, he cradled a shoebox. He was wearing blue jeans, Converse high tops, and a bright orange t-shirt that said "Camp Half-Blood." Just plain old Grover, not the goat boy. So maybe I'd had a nightmare. Maybe my mom was okay. We were still on vacation, and we stopped at this big house for some reason, and... "You saved my life," Grover said, and well, the least I could do. I went back to the hill. "I thought you might want this." Avertly, he placed the shoebox in my lap. Inside was a black and white bull's horn, the base jagged from being broken off, the tip splattered with dried blood. It hadn't been a nightmare. "The Minotaur," I said. Percy, it isn't a good idea." "That's what they call him in the Greek myths, isn't it?" I demanded. "The Minotaur, half man, half bull." Grover shifted uncomfortably. "You've been out for 2 days. How much do you remember?" "My mom. Is she really?" He looked down. I stared across the meadow. There were groves of trees, a winding stream, acres of strawberries spread out under the blue sky. The valley was surrounded by rolling hills, and the tallest one, directly in front of us, was the one with the huge pine tree on top. Even that looked beautiful in the sunlight. My mother was gone. The whole world should be black and cold. Nothing should look beautiful. "I'm sorry," Grover sniffled. "I'm a failure. I'm the worst satyr in the world." He moaned, stomping his foot so hard it came off. The Converse high top came off. The inside was filled with styrofoam, except for a hoof-shaped hole. "Oh, sticks," he mumbled. Thunder rolled across the clear sky. As he struggled to get his hoof back in the fade foot, I thought, well, that settles it. Grover was a satyr. I was ready to bet that if I shaved his curly brown hair, I'd find tiny horns on his head. But I was too miserable to care that satyrs existed, or even minotaurs. All that meant was my mom really had been squeezed into nothingness, dissolved into yellow light. I was alone, an orphan. I would have to live with smelly gab. No, that would never happen. I would live on the streets first. I would pretend I was 17 and join the army. I'd do something. Grover was sniffling. The poor kid, poor goat, satyr, whatever, looked as if he expected to be hit. I said, "It wasn't your fault." "Yes, it was. I was supposed to protect you." "Did my mother ask you to protect me?" "No, but that's my job. I'm a keeper." At least I was. But why? I suddenly felt dizzy, my vision swimming. "Don't strain yourself," Grover said. "Here." He helped me hold my glass and put the straw to my lips. I recoiled at the taste because I was expecting apple juice. It wasn't that at all. It was chocolate chip cookies, liquid cookies, and not just any cookies. My mom's homemade blue chocolate chip cookies, buttery and hot, with the chips still melting. Drinking it, my whole body felt warm and good, full of energy. My grief didn't go away, but I felt as if my mom had just brushed her hand against my cheek, given me a cookie the way she used to when I was small, and told me everything was going to be okay. Before I knew it, I drained the glass. I stared into it. Sure, I just had a warm drink, but the ice cubes hadn't even melted. "Was it good?" Grover asked. I nodded. "What did it taste like?" He sounded so wistful I felt guilty. "Sorry," I said. "I should have let you taste." His eyes got wide. "No, that's not what I meant. I just wondered." "Chocolate chip cookies," I said. "My mom's. Homemade." He sighed. "And how do you feel?" "Like I could throw Nancy Bobo Fit 100 yards. "That's good," he said. "That's good. I don't think you could risk drinking any more of that stuff." "What do you mean?" He took the empty glass on me gingerly, as if it were dynamite, and set it back on the table. "Come on. Chiron and Mr. D are waiting." The porch wrapped all the way around the farmhouse. My legs felt wobbly trying to walk that far. Grover offered to carry the Minotaur horn, but I held on to it. I paid for that souvenir the hard way. I wasn't going to let it go. As we came around the opposite end of the house, I caught my breath. We must have been on the north shore of Long Island, because on this side of the house, the valley marched all the way up the water, which glittered about a mile in the distance. Between here and there, I simply couldn't process everything I was seeing. The landscape was dotted with buildings that looked like ancient green architecture. An open-air pavilion, an amphitheater, a circular arena. Except they all looked brand new, with their white marble columns sparkling in the sun. In a nearby sandpit, a dozen high school-aged kids and satyrs played volleyball. Canoes glided across a small lake. Kids in bright orange t-shirts like Grover's were chasing each other around a cluster of cabins nestled in the woods. Some shot targets at an archery range. Others rode horses down a wooden trail and, unless I was hallucinating, some of their horses had wings. Not at the end of the porch. Two men sat across from each other at a card table. The blonde-haired girl who'd spoon-fed me popcorn-flavored pudding was leaning against the porch rail next to them. The man facing me was small but porky. He had a big nose, big watery eyes, and curly hair so black it was almost purple. He looked like those paintings of baby angels. What do you call them? Hubbubs? No, cherubs, that's it. He looked like a cherub who'd been turned middle-aged in a trailer park. He wore a tiger-patterned Hawaiian shirt, and he would have fit right in at one of Gabe's poker parties. Except I got the feeling this guy could have out-gambled even my stepfather. "That's Mr. D," Grover mumbled to me. "He's the camp director. Be polite." The girl, that's Annabel's Chase. She's just a camper, but she's been here longer than just about anybody. And you already know Chiron. He pointed at the guy whose back was to me. First, I realized he was sitting in a wheelchair. Then I recognized the tweed jacket, the thinning brown hair, the swaggly beard. "Mr. Brunner," I cried. The Latin teacher turned and smiled at me. His eyes had that mischievous glint they sometimes got in class when he pulled a pop quiz and made all the multiple choice answers B. "Ah, good, Percy," he said. "Now we have 4 for Pinocchio." He offered me a chair up to the right of Mr. D, who looked at me with bloodshot eyes and heaved a great sigh. "Oh, I suppose I must say it. Welcome to Camp Half-Blood. There. Now, don't expect me to be glad to see you." Thanks." I scooted a little farther away from him because it was one thing I had learned. Wait, Gabby. It was hard to tell when an adult has been hitting the happy juice. If Mr. D was a stranger to alcohol, I was a satyr. "Annabeth," Mr. Brunner called to the blonde girl. She came forward and Mr. Brunner introduced us. "This young lady nursed you back to health, Percy." "Annabeth, my dear, why don't you go check on Percy's bunk?" I neared the sneeze. "We're putting him in cabin 11 for now." "Sure, Chiron." She was probably my age, maybe a couple of inches taller, and a whole lot more athletic looking. With her deep tan and her curly blonde hair, she was almost exactly what I thought a stereotypical California girl would look like, except her eyes ruined the image. They were starting grey, like storm clouds. Pretty, but intimidating too. As if she were analysing the best way to take me down in a fight. She glanced down at the Minotaur horn in my hands, then back at me. I imagined she was going to say, "You killed a Minotaur," or "Wow, you're so awesome," or something like that. Instead, she said, "You drool when you sleep." Then she sprinted off down the lawn, her blonde hair flying behind her. "So," I said, anxious to change the subject, "you, work here, Mr. Brunner." "Not Mr. Brunner," the ex-Mr. Brunner said. "I'm afraid that was a pseudonym. You may call me Chiron." Okay, totally confused, I looked at the director. "And Mr. D, does that stand for something?" Mr. D stopped shuffling the cards. He looked at me like I just belched loudly. "Young man, names are powerful things. You can't just go around using them for no reason." "Oh, right, sorry." "I must say, Percy," Chiron Brunner broke in, "I'm glad to see you alive. It's been a long time since I've made a house call to a potential camper. I hate to think I've wasted my time." "House call?" "My year at Yancy Academy to instruct you. We have satyrs at most schools, of course, keeping a lookout. But Grover alerted me as soon as he met you. He sensed you were something special, so I decided to come upstate. I convinced the other Latin teacher to, take a leave of absence." I tried to remember the beginning of the school year. It seemed like so long ago, but I did have a fuzzy memory of there being another Latin teacher of my first week at Yancy. Then, without explanation, he had disappeared and Mr. Brunner had taken the class. "You came to Yancy just to teach me?" I asked. Sharon nodded. "Honestly, I wasn't sure about you at first. You contacted your mother, let her know we were keeping an eye on you in case you were ready for Camp Half-Blood. But you still had so much to learn. Nevertheless, you made it here alive, and that's always the first test." "Grover," Mr. D said impatiently, "are you playing or not?" "Yes, sir." Grover trembled as he took the 4th chair, though I didn't know why he should be so afraid of a pudgy little man in a tiger print Hawaiian shirt. "You do know how to play Pinocchio?" Mr. D eyed me suspiciously. "I'm afraid not," I said. "I'm afraid not, sir," he said. "Sir," I repeated. I was liking the camp less and less. "Well," he told me, "it is, along with gladiator fighting and Pac-Man, one of the greatest games ever invented by humans. I would expect all civilized young men to know the rules." "I'm sure the boy can learn," Chiron said. "Please," I said, "what is this place? What am I doing here? Mr. Chiron, why would you go to Yancy Academy just to teach me?" Mr. D snorted. I asked the same question. The camp director dealt the cards. Grover flinched every time one landed in his pile. Chiron smiled at me sympathetically, the way he used to in Latin class, as if to let me know no matter what my average was, I was his star student. He expected me to have the right answer. "Percy," he said, "did your mother tell you nothing?" "She said, I remember her sad eyes looking out over the sea. She told me she was afraid to send me here, even though my father had wanted her to. She said once that I got here, I probably couldn't leave. She wanted to keep me close to her. Typical, Mr. D said. That's how they usually get killed. Young men, are you bidding or not? What? I asked. He explained impatiently how you bid in Pinocchio, and so I did. I'm afraid there's too much to tell, Sharon said. I'm afraid our usual orientation film won't be so sufficient. Orientation film? I asked. No, Sharon decided. Well, Percy, you know your friend Grover's a satyr. You know, he pointed to the horn in the shoebox. That you have killed the Minotaur. No small feat either, lad. What you may not know is that great powers are at work in your life. Gods, the forces you call the Greek gods, are very much alive. I stared at Atlas around the table. I waited for somebody to yell, not, but all I got was Mr. D yelling, "Oh, a royal marriage. Trick, trick." He cackled as he tallied up his points. Mr. D, Grover asked timidly, if you're not going to eat it, could I have your Diet Coke can? Eh? Oh, alright. Grover bit a huge shard out of the empty aluminum can and chewed it mournfully. Wait, I told Chiron. You're telling me there is such thing as God. Well now, Chiron said. God, capital G, God. It's a different matter altogether. We shan't deal with the metaphysical. Metaphysical? But you're just talking about... Ah, gods. Plural, as in... The great beings that control the forces of nature and human endeavors. The immortal gods of Olympus. That's a smaller matter. Smaller? Yes, quite. The gods we discussed in Latin class. Zeus, I said. Hera, Apollo. You mean them? There it was again. Distant thunder on a cloudless day. Young man, said Mr. D. I would really be less casual about throwing those names around if I were you. But they're stories, I said. They are myths to explain lightning and the seasons and stuff. They're what people believed in before there was science. Science, Mr. D scoffed. And tell me, Perseus Jackson. I flinched when he said my real name, which I had never told anybody. What will people think of your science 2,000 years from now? Mr. D continued. They will call it primitive mumbo-jumbo, that's what. Oh, I love mortals. They have absolutely no sense of perspective. They think they've come so far. And have they, Charon? Look at this boy and tell me. I wasn't liking Mr. D much, but there was something about the way he called me mortal, as if he wasn't. It was enough to put a lump in my throat, to suggest why Grover was dutifully minding his cards, chewing his soda can, and keeping his mouth shut. Percy, Charon said, you may choose to believe or not, but the fact is that immortal means immortal. Can you imagine that for a moment? Never dying, never fading, existing just as you are for all the time. I was about to answer off the top of my head, but that it sounded like a pretty good deal, but the tone of Charon's voice made me hesitate. You mean, whether people believed in you or not? Exactly, Charon agreed. If you were a god, how would you like being called a myth, an old story to explain lightning? What if I told you, Perseus Jackson, that someday people will call you a myth, just created to explain how little boys can get over losing their mothers? My heart pounded. He was trying to make me angry for some reason, but I wasn't going to let him. I said, I wouldn't like it, but I don't believe in gods. Oh, you better, Mr. D murmured, before one of them incinerates you. Grover said, please, sir. He's just lost his mother. He's in shock. A lucky thing too, Mr. D grumbled, playing a card. Bad enough I'm confined to this miserable job, working with boys who don't even believe. He waved his hand and a goblet appeared on his side, as his sunlight had bent momentarily and woven the air into glass. The goblet filled itself with red wine. My jaw dropped, but Charon hardly looked up. "Mr. D," he warned, "your restrictions." Mr. D looked at the wine and feigned surprise. "Dear me," he looked at the sky and yelled, "Old habit, sorry." More thunder. Mr. D waved his hand again, and the wine glass changed into a fresh can of Diet Coke. He sighed unhappily, popped the top off the soda, and went back to his card game. Charon winked at me. Mr. D offended his father a while back, took a fancy to a wood nymph who had been declared off limits. "Wood nymph," I repeated, still staring at the Diet Coke can like it was from outer space. "Yes," Mr. D confessed. "Father loves to punish me. The first time, probation, ghastly, absolutely horrid 10 years. The second time, well, she was really pretty and I couldn't stay away. The second time, he sent me here, Half-Blood Hill, summer camp for brats like you. Be a better influence," he told me. "Work with youths rather than tearing them down. Ha, absolutely unfair." Mr. D sounded about 6 years old, like a pouting little kid. "And," I stammered, "your father is the Immortals, Charon. I thought you taught this boy the basics." "My father is Zeus, of course." I went through the D names from Greek mythology. Wine, the skin of a tire. It's satyrs that all seem to work here. The way Grover cringed, as if Mr. D were his master. "You're Dionysus," I said, "the god of wine." Mr. D rolled his eyes. "What do they say these days, Grover? Do your children say, 'well, duh'?" "Yes, Mr. D." "Then, well, duh, Percy Jackson. Do you think I was Aphrodite, perhaps?" "You're a god, yes, child. A god, you." He turned to look at me straight on, and I saw a kind of purplish fire in his eyes, a hint that this whiny, plump little man was only showing me the tiniest bit of his true nature. I saw visions of great vines choking unbelievers to death, drunken warriors insane with battle lust, sailors screaming as their hands turned into flippers, their faces elongating into dolphin snouts. I knew that if I pushed him, Mr. D would show me worse things. He would plant a disease in my brain that would leave me wearing a straitjacket in the rubber room for the rest of my life. "Would you like to test me, child?" he said quietly. No, sir." The fire died a little. He turned back to his card game. "I believe I win." "Not quite, Mr. D," Charon said. He set down a straight, tallied the points, and said, "The game goes to me." I thought Mr. D was going to vaporize Charon right off his wheelchair, but he just sighed through his nose, as if he would be used to being beaten by the Latin teacher. He got up, and Grover rose too. "I'm tired," Mr. D said. "I believe I take a nap before the sing-along tonight. But first, Grover, we need to talk again about your less than perfect performance on this assignment." Grover's face beaded with sweat. "Yes, sir." Mr. D turned to me. "Cabin 11, Percy Jackson, and mind your manners." He stepped into the farmhouse, Grover following miserably. "Will Grover be okay?" I asked Charon. Charon nodded, though he looked a bit troubled. "Old Dionysus isn't really mad. He just hates his job. He's been, grounded, I guess you would say, and he can't stand beating another century before he's allowed to go back to Olympus." "Mount Olympus," I said. "You're telling me there really is a place there?" "Well, now, there's Mount Olympus in Greece, and there's the home of the gods, the convergence point of their powers, which did indeed used to be on Mount Olympus. It's still called Mount Olympus out of respect to the old ways, but the palace moves, Percy, just as the gods do." "You mean the Greek gods are here, like in America?" "Well, certainly. The gods move with the heart of the West." "The what?" "Come now, Percy. What you call Western civilization. Do you think it's just an abstract concept? No, it's a living force. A collective consciousness that had burned bright for thousands of years. The gods are part of it. You might even say they are the source of it, or at least, they are tied so tightly to it that they couldn't possibly fade. Not unless all of Western civilization were obliterated. The fire started in Greece. Then, as you well know, or I hope you know since you passed my course, the heart of fire moved to the Romans, and so did the gods. Oh, different names perhaps. Jupiter for Zeus, Venus for Aphrodite, and so on. But the same forces, the same gods. And then they died. No, did the West die? The gods simply moved, to Germany, to France, to Spain for a while. Wherever the flame was brightest, the gods were there. They spent several centuries in England. All you need to do is look at their architecture. People do not forget the gods. Every place they've ruled for the last 3,000 years, you can see them in paintings and statues on the most important buildings. And yes, Percy, of course they are now in your United States. Look at your symbol, the eagle of Zeus. Look at the statue of Postmentus in the Rockefeller Center. The Greek facades of your government buildings in Washington. I defy you to find any American city where the Olympians are not permanently displayed in multiple places. And believe me, plenty of people weren't very fond of Rome either. America is not the heart of the flame. It is the great power of the West, and so Olympus is here, and we are here. It was all too much, especially the fact I seemed to be included in Charon's we, as if I was part of some club. Who are you, Charon? Who am I? Charon smiled. He shifted his weight as if he was going to get up out of his wheelchair, but I knew that was impossible. He was paralyzed from the waist down. Who are you? He mused. Well, that's the question we all want answered, isn't it? But for now, we should get you a bunk in cabin 11. There will be new friends to meet, and plenty of time for lessons tomorrow. Besides, there will be s'mores at campfire tonight, and I simply adore chocolate. And then he did rise from his wheelchair, but there was something odd about the way he did it. His blanket fell away from his legs, but the legs didn't move. His waist kept getting longer, rising above his belt. At first, I thought he was wearing very long, white velvet underwear, but as he kept rising out of the chair, taller than any man, I realized that the velvet underwear wasn't underwear. It was the front of an animal, muscular and sinew under coarse white fur. And the wheelchair wasn't a chair. It was some kind of container, an enormous box on wheels, and it must have been magic, because there was no way it could have held all of him. A leg came out, long and knobby-kneed, with a huge polished tooth, then another front leg, then hindquarters, and then the box was empty. Nothing but a metal shell with a couple of fake human legs attached. I stared at the horse who had just sprung from the wheelchair, a huge white stallion. But where its neck should be was the upper body of my Latin teacher, smoothly grafted into the horse's trunk. What a relief, the centaur said. I'd been cooped up in there for so long, my fetlocks had fallen asleep. Well, welcome. Now come, Percy Jackson, let's meet the other campers. Chapter 6. I became the supreme lord of the bathroom. Once I got over the fact that my Latin teacher was a horse, we had a nice tour, though I was careful not to walk behind him. I'd done Pooper Scooper patrol in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade a few times, and I'm not sorry, I did not trust Charon's back end the way I trusted his front. We passed the volleyball pit. Several of the campers nudged each other. One pointed to the Minotaur horn I was carrying. Another said, "That's him." Most of the campers were older than me. Their satyr friends were bigger than Grover, all of them trotting in orange Camp Half-Blood t-shirts, with nothing else to cover their bare shaggy hindquarters. I wasn't normally shy, but the way they stared at me made me uncomfortable. I felt like they were expecting me to do a flip or something. I looked back at the farmhouse. It was a lot bigger than I realized. 4 stories tall, sky blue with white trim, like an upscale seaside resort. I was checking out the brass eagle weather vane on top when something caught my eye. a shadow in the uppermost window of the attic gable. Something had moved the curtain, just for a second, and I got the distinct impression I was being watched. "What's up there?" I asked Charon. He looked where I was pointing, and his smile faded. "Just the attic." "Somebody lives there?" "No," he said with finality. "Not a single living thing." I got the feeling he was being truthful, but I was also sure something had moved that curtain. "Come along, Percy," Charon said, his light-hearted tone now a little forced. "Lots to see." We walked through the strawberry fields, where campers were picking bushels of berries while a satyr played a tune on a reed pipe. Charon told me the camp grew a nice crop for export to New York restaurants and Mount Olympus. "It pays our expenses," he explained, "and the strawberries take almost no effort." He said Mr. D had this effect on fruit-bearing plants. They just went crazy when he was around. It worked the best with wine grapes, but Mr. D was restricted from growing those, so they grew strawberries instead. I watched the satyr playing his pipe. His music was causing lines of bugs to leave the strawberry patch in every direction, like refugees fleeing a fire. I wondered if Grover could work that kind of magic with music. I wonder if you're still inside the farmhouse, getting chewed out by Mr. D. "Grover won't get in too much trouble, will he?" I asked Charon. "I mean, he was a good protector, really." Charon sighed. He shed his tweed jacket and draped it over his horse's back like a shadow. "Grover has big dreams, Percy. Perhaps bigger than are reasonable. To reach his goal, he must first demonstrate great courage by succeeding as the keeper, finding a new camper and bringing him safely to Half-Blood Hill." "Well, he did that. I might agree with you," Charon said, "but it is not my place to judge. Dionysus and the Council of Cloven Elders must decide. I'm afraid they might not see this assignment as a success. After all, Grover lost you in New York. Then there's the unfortunate fate of your mother, and the fact that Grover was unconscious when you dragged him over the property line. The council might question whether this shows any courage on Grover's part." I wanted to protest. None of what happened was Grover's fault. I also felt really, really guilty. If I hadn't given Grover the slip at the bus station, he might not have gotten in trouble. "He'll get a second chance, won't he?" Charon winced. "I'm afraid that was Grover's second chance, Percy." The council was not anxious to give him another either after what happened the first time 5 years ago. Olympus knows I advised him to wait longer before trying again. He's still so small for his age. "How old is he?" "Oh, 28. And what? And he's in 6th grade? Statures mature half as fast as humans, Percy. Grover has been the equivalent of a middle school student for the past 6 years." "Quite," Charon agreed. "At any rate, Grover is a late bloomer, even by Satur's standards, and not yet very accomplished at woodland magic. Alas, he was anxious to pursue his dream. Perhaps now he will find some other career." That's not fair," I said. "What happened the first time? Was it really so bad?" Charon looked away quickly. "Let's move along, shall we?" But I wasn't quite ready to let the subject drop. Something had occurred to me when Charon talked about my mother's fate, as he was intentionally avoiding the word death. The beginnings of an idea, a tiny, hopeful fire, started forming in my mind. "Charon," I said, "if the gods and Olympus and all that are real, yes, child, does that mean the underworld is real too?" Charon's expression darkened. "Yes, child," he paused, as if choosing his words carefully. There is a place where spirits go after death, but for now, until we know more, I would urge you to put that place out of your mind." "What do you mean, until we know more?" "Come, Percy, let's see the woods." As we got closer, I realized how huge the forest was. It took up at least a quarter of the valley, with trees so tall and thick, you could imagine nobody had been there since the Native Americans. Charon said, "The woods are stocked if you care to try your luck, but go armed." "Stocked with what?" I asked. "Armed with what?" "We'll see. Capture the flag is Friday night. Do you have your own sword and shield?" "My own? No," Charon said. "I don't suppose you do." "I think a size 5 will do. I'll visit the armory later." I wanted to ask what kind of summer camp had an armory, but there was too much else to think about, so the tour continued. We saw the archery range, the canoeing lake, the stables, which Charon didn't seem to like very much, the javelin range, the sing-along amphitheater, and the arena where Charon said they held sword and spear fights. "Sword and spear fights?" I asked. "Cabin challenges and all that," he explained. "Not lethal, usually." "Oh, yes, and there's the mess hall." Charon pointed to an outdoor pavilion framed in white Grecian columns on a hill overlooking the sea. There were a dozen stone picnic tables, no roof, no walls. "What do you do when it rains?" Charon looked at me as if I'd gone a little weird. "We still have to eat, don't we?" I decided to drop the subject. Finally, he showed me the cabins. There were 12 of them nestled in the woods by the lake. They were arranged in a U, with 2 at the base and 5 in a row on either side. And they were without doubt the most bizarre collection of buildings I'd ever seen. Except for the fact they each had a large brass number above the door, odds on the left, evens on the right. They looked absolutely nothing alike. Number 9 had smokestacks, like a tiny factory. Number 4 had tomato vines on the walls and a roof made out of real grass. 7 seems to be made of solid gold, which gleamed so much in the sunlight it was almost impossible to look at. They all faced a commons area about the size of a soccer field, dotted with Greek statues, fountains, flower beds, and a couple of basketball hoops, which were more my speed. In the center of the field was a huge stone-lined fire pit. Even though it was a warm afternoon, the hearth smoldered. A girl about 9 years old was tending the flames, poking the coals with a stick.
Sorry, what's the page number you left at?
42.
42, thanks.
Can, bye-bye.